Most of the women that I filmed in my first film, Gülistan Land of Roses, they died while fighting ISIS. And not only I lost them, but I lost many friends and many people who fight ISIS at that time. Because as we all remember, the Iraqi army ran away when ISIS attacked the region. The Syrian army ran away, and then the majority of the Kurdish people fight them. Making this film for me was kind of a grieving process, but also a way to understand the brainwash. How can someone be that brainwashed and explain everything he did by a fundamentalist way of seeing religion? So today you're going to see my quest of trying to understand the human being behind of all this historical moment of the region. So I hope you enjoyed, and I would be there, of course, after for the Q&A with Shirin. Thank you so much.
I'm sure everybody like me thinks a lot about your process. The first thing I thought about after I watched the film is, how did she withstand it for 6 months? How did she get access to the prison to be able to speak with the prisoners? What was that process like? Yeah. And how did you and your team feel being faced day after day with this notorious violent men? And so can you speak a little bit about your process and basically how did you get permission and have access to this prison and the prisoners?
It's a long story because I made a first film about the Kurdish women fighters. So before even doing that film, so I did that film in 2016, but I started research in 2010. So back in 2010, when I was 20 years old, I did like my first research in Iraqi Kurdistan. So I was going back and forth and trying to convince people to do my film. And I met a lot of people from the Kurdish army. And slowly they accept me and they do some research of who I am and who's my family. And slowly I could get in. And I'm also a photographer. So I was going back also for photography purpose. And so over the years, I think they trusted me. And when we went to Syrian Kurdistan, actually I was using my first film as my card to tell them who I am and what is my goal. And so they kind of knew I was a real filmmaker. Because it's, you know, when you're a foreigner, even though you have like Kurdish roots, there was a lot of spies, there was a lot of strange people in Syria at that time. So they trusted me, and slowly we stayed so long. We stayed over like 6 months in the region. Most of the journalists or the filmmakers, they stay 1 month, and especially in war zone, you know, you're risking your life. So I think the fact also that we stay so long, and every day I was going to see them, and I was, and you know, explaining again and again the film and why I want to do that. They saw that I was so perseverant. I think they give me one permission that lead to another permission. And the strange thing is that everything, because they have this, the Kurdish region have this idealistic dream for the region where they want to establish a feminist, democratic society where the pluralism of religion and culture exists, and they want to have like representative of each ethnicity in the parliament, and everything is decentralized also. So every time that you want to have one permission, you have to talk with 50 people. So every minute of this film is weeks and weeks of work just to be able to go to the place.
I kept thinking about you as a woman and your team being exposed the true evil. I mean, we're talking about men who have beheaded and been responsible for killing and very violent killing of so many people, and that they still have this strong conviction of being radical. And did you at any time feel that you actually sympathized for them, or you hated them, or what was your? Because I've myself never met people like that, and I'm thinking that our people at some point have good in them, and they can't be pure evil, but then there are exceptions. But I just wonder, how did you feel facing one after? How many people did you interview altogether?
I met around 100 ISIS members. At the end, I interviewed 50 of them, which they accept to be in the film. And in the final editing, there was 15 of them. It's a very strange experience to be in front of a human being at his worst, because you don't born as a bad person, you become a bad person. And that's what I try to understand when I'm asking those very personal questions. So what was your life as a kid? How did you grow up? Where did you come from? What is your background? What happened in your life? Because the same person could leave the same thing, the same events in his life and not become a murderer. So what is the difference? How do you become that? It was really my goal in the film. I was trying to dig and dig and dig, and I couldn't understand, because some of the people who, live the most atrocious and violent thing, they would become actually a good person because they want to do exactly the opposite. And it was a very strange experience, because I think they're brainwashed and they think I am brainwashed. So how do you have a conversation with someone who thinks you are brainwashed? So the conversation actually, on my side, had to be very open-minded, very right to the point, stick to my question, and really had a good listening to their saying, to make sure that I understand the link that they are making, and to be able to jump on whatever they're saying, to make sure that my questions are relevant. So it was a very strange experience. Before even seeing them, as I said, I was watching all the videos. So I was not necessarily very, I didn't really have sympathy for them, but I could relate to them, because, for example, the guy who was singing this Canadian song, I grew up with that song. He's the same age that I am. So we could have some link that I would understand how it happened in their life, but I couldn't understand what they did, because explaining that you beheaded people by religion, by a fundamentalist way of seeing religion, is not acceptable. It's not, when you pass that line, there is no return, I think.
Filmmaking is such a draining, it's really like moving mountains, but to be there for 6 months and to hear these horror stories from these prisoners and to go through the bureaucracy that you did, didn't you feel fatigued emotionally and to stay for 6 months? And did you ever have an experience that was dangerous or you felt unsafe? I know you were with 2 other people, but did you ever feel like you regretted embarking on this project?
I never regretted, because it's such a personal story of me. It's my people who died, who fight. It's the woman that I liked and loved after one film that they died. And I was seeing, because I was there from the beginning of the war, all those orphans, and it's a total mess, and no one really talk about it in the angle that I wanted to talk about it. So I never regret doing this film, but I think the most scary thing that we faced was when we went to Raqqa, so the capital, used to be the capital of the Islamic State in Syria. I was with one of the DOP and myself. We were only 2 with 2 bodyguards, and we were going around with a blended car because it was so dangerous. The town was just took over by the coalition. So a lot of people were still living in the town. So it was unclear who is a part of ISIS, who is not. And there were kids, and a lot of, life was going on, and everything was destroyed, as we can see in the film. And one day, me and my crew and my bodyguards, we were outside and we were filming this beautiful scene where, it was the sunset and everything was going pretty normal in the town. And the bodyguard told us, I feel like something is happening. I don't know exactly what, but I feel it's not the right moment for us to be there. And I didn't understand why he was saying that, because everything was so calm and so peaceful in a way. And I insisted, no, we should stay. It's very nice. And he said, no, we should, wrap it up and let's go. So we went in the car, and like 5 minutes later, exactly where we were, a bomb exploded. So they were targeting us because we were like in our back, there were a wall, and exactly behind the wall, they put a bag full of explosive. So that, I think, was the most scary thing, because, it seems so calm, but you never know what would happen.
I have one other thing that really struck me is that the story is so heavy, and the interviews really are disturbing when you listen to them, and yet the cinematography and the way in which it moves from these interviews into this drone slow shots over the camps and the fire, it is a kind of moment of relief for the audience, I think. I think it's extremely exquisite choice. I was talking with Arshia, the cinematographer, and I felt that it was really clever, but also really helped the audience to have a perspective, have a little distance from all those conversations. So in terms of the filmmaking style, what did you have in mind in terms of how you incorporated the silence, nature, this aerial view together with these interviews? I thought that was a really interesting choice you made.
We thought about the interviews as the core of the film, because depending of whatever they're telling me, I'm trying to find what I can relate it in the actual Syria after the war. So, I didn't want that the interview contaminated the image of Syria. So the interviews and Syria belongs to the Syrian. So it's very sharp cut, because I really want to separate those two universes, let's say. And before even going to Syria, I actually did my thesis about the interviews, and I applied all the theory that I learned in theoretical. I just applied practically in my film, and I did it with my first film as well. And it was a sense of, they are performing when they have this interview, because they really wanted to make sure that we understand them very well, and they are proud of what they're saying. Some wanted to show me that they regret, but they don't really regret. They regret that the Islamic State is the end of the Islamic State, but not that they regret to be part of it. They regretted to not seeing their kids and so on. So it was, I had like a very strong idea of how I wanted to make those interviews, making sure that they look at the lens. So they look at the people who's watching the film. It's kind of like not only a conversation between me and them, it's a conversation between me and you as well, that are looking and watching the film. And I always had this idea to go from the micro to the macro, and to always have, when you go to you focus on the smallest, let's say, grain of salt or grain of something, then you go to the big picture. There is a comprehension, there is an understanding of the situation much better when you look at in those scales, when you compare those scales. So I thought it was important to have this distance, because also what they are saying is so violent to listen, so horrible, that we need a time to breathe. We need a time to, just thinking about what they said. So it was, we every time that we were also filming with the drone, we were going on the ground also to film with the camera, and make sure that we have few points of view of the same situation, let's say.
I think the music for me at the end, it gives such a sense of joy after all the heaviness. How did you choose that music? Where did that music come from?
I heard a song in the radio, and it was so beautiful. And I recorded on my phone, and no one knew who was the singer. So we were in the region for 6 months. So for almost 3-4 months, I was looking for the singer all around Syria. So every time that I was seeing someone from the place, I was making sure that they listened to the song, and I was asking them, do you know the singer? Do you know who is it? And it's happened that actually the singer lived 10 minutes away from one of the hotels that we were. So I find the singer, and I explained him the project and what I want. And I told him, can you do a song that, you know, as joyful, as beautiful, about how beautiful is your country, how it's relaxed your mind, how it's not everything that we hear in the news and about Syria. So I kind of wanted to give back Syria to Syrians with the song. That's why it's finished like so joyful. But it's like we wrote the lyrics together. We discussed about it for days and weeks, and then he performed it in a park.
The last thing I want to say, I know we're probably running out of time. I couldn't help but think about your film and its relevance to the time that we live in, and how fundamentalism, religion, religious fervor, and the brainwashing is creating so much violence all around the world, from the Islamic Republic of Iran to Hamas to the extremists in Israel to everywhere. So it really, I think this film, it's not just about ISIS, but the nature of extremists of any kind, any religion, that it's really become a threat to our humanity, and so much suffering, and such as what we see in Israel and Palestine today. And I know it's not possible to open to the audience, but I just wanted to say that I think this film is very powerful, and his resonance is not reduced to the violence that is generated by ISIS, but any fundamentalist group that creates terrorism in the world. And I think it's a very powerful film.
I just want to jump in about what you said, because it's so interesting. You know, I'm the least person really wanted to listen to the ISIS people. I'm a Kurdish woman who lived in the region while the war was happening. So I thought, if I'm able to go and listen to the fundamentalists, I think everyone can do this effort. And it's only by understanding how the brainwash work that we can imagine the solution that is coming afterwards. Because the cycle of violence have to stop. If we just answer to the violence with violence and keep continuing, it would never end. So I think really, as a society, as a collective, we can think about what we can do to make sure that this wouldn't happen again.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
I wish you all the luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone for being here today.